Kabbalah. Kabbalah is an esoteric discipline and school of thought rooted in Jewish mysticism. Its name literally means receiving or tradition in Hebrew, hinting that this knowledge was meant to be handed down quietly from teacher to initiated student, not blasted on Instagram. It isn't just Jewish magic or a looser, cooler version of everyday Judaism. Classically, it is the inner layer of Torah, reserved for people who were already grounded in law and text. Its roots reach back to early mystical traditions around prophetic visions like Ezekiel's freaky divine chariot, then surface in texts like Sefer Yetzirah and Sefer HaBahir, explode in 13th century Spain with the Zohar, and get radically systematized in the 16th century by Isaac Luria, whose Lurianic Kabbalah became the operating system most people mean when they say Kabbalah today. The central question it's obsessed with is deceptively simple. How can an infinite, perfect God interact with a finite, messy world without either being diluted or crushing everything? To answer that, Kabbalah offers not just theology, but a full-stack model of reality, maps of how divine energy emanates, condenses, and becomes worlds, how the Sefirot, angels, souls, and mitzvot all plug into that system, and what humans are supposed to do in response. It works on three fronts at once: theoretical, understanding God and the cosmos; meditative, using divine names, letter permutations, and visualizations to align with those forces; and practical ethical, arguing that every moral choice literally rewires the spiritual circuits upstream. The universe in this view isn't static. Creation is ongoing, God's energy is constantly flowing into existence, and humans are active collaborators in either repairing or further damaging the system. Over time, Kabbalah leaked out of its secretive circles into Christian Kabbalah and Hermetic Kabbalah, got remixed by Renaissance occultists and 20th century New Age practitioners, and today shows up as celebrity Kabbalah centers, red string bracelets, and mystical merch, a very public, highly diluted descendant of what once was a tightly guarded, highly technical mystical science. Ein Sof, infinite nothingness. Ein Sof is the Kabbalistic name for God in the most ultimate, unreachable sense, literally without end in Hebrew, pointing at the divine before any creation, form, thought, or even godness as we normally mean it. The term, first clearly used by 12th century mystic Azrael of Girona, leans into negative theology. You can't say Ein Sof is X without lying a little, because any attribute, kind, wise, powerful, turns the infinite into a category. That's why the Zohar insists that even calling it by a holy name is technically wrong. Names belong to the later stages where God is already expressing specific qualities, the realm of the Sefirot. Ein Sof sits above all that, pure, undifferentiated source, more like blinding white light than any of the colored beams that later shine through stained glass. This is the uncomfortable part. The God of stories, commandments, and personal prayer, the God of mercy and justice, is Kabbalistically a revealed face of something infinitely beyond, the way sunlight is a mode of the sun, not the sun itself. Ein Sof is often coupled with the word ayin, nothingness. Not because God is a cosmic zero, but because from our perspective, an existence with no form, limits, or attributes is indistinguishable from nothing. We have no mental tools to grasp it. All the structured language of the Sefirot and the Tree of Life is therefore a map not of Ein Sof itself, but of how Ein Sof appears once it starts relating to a world. And in a little cultural plot twist, modern Hebrew just casually uses Ein Sof to mean infinity in math class, a tiny fossil of this once terrifying mystical idea living an ordinary, secular life. Tzimtzum, divine contraction. Tzimtzum is Isaac Luria's wild solution to the core paradox. If the infinite divine light fills all, where is there room for anything else? His answer is that God creates not by adding more stuff, but by self-limiting, by contracting or withdrawing the infinite light from a conceptual space, leaving a shalal panui, a vacant zone in which something finite can exist without being instantly vaporized by divinity. The Hebrew root of Tzimtzum packs a lot in: contraction, concentration, boundary drawing, restraint. God isn't disappearing. God is choosing not to overwhelm, like a parent stepping back so a child can learn to walk without being carried everywhere. This creates a deliberate paradox. For creation to be truly other, there must be a sense of divine absence. But for creation to survive, God must still be fully present, continuously animating every atom. Later, Hasidic thinkers pounced on this and split into two readings. A more literal reading says there really is a kind of concealed zone where the light no longer shines in the same way, making genuine autonomy and even real evil possible. A non-literal reading says Tzimtzum is only in our perception. God hasn't moved an inch, but the structure of creation filters the light so strongly that we experience pockets of reality as if God were gone, the way infrared light is all around but invisible to naked eyes. Psychologists and theologians love this metaphor. It looks like divine parenting, therapeutic holding space, or healthy boundary setting on a cosmic scale. God self-limits so that we and real free will can exist. Reshimu, cosmic residue. Reshimu is the faint imprint of divinity that remains inside the vacant space after Tzimtzum, the residue of infinite light on creation's blank page. If Tzimtzum were an absolutely clean wipe, nothing of the original light would remain, and the new universe would be totally unmoored. Reshimu is Kabbalah's way of saying, no, the canvas still smells like paint. It's not the light itself and not a vessel. It's more like a ghost image or aftertaste, a barely there memory of the infinite stamped into the very fabric of the empty space. That trace matters because it quietly guides what comes next. It gives the new structures a built-in orientation back toward their source, the way trauma, training, or culture leaves patterns in a psyche that shape new experiences, whether you notice them or not. Lurianic texts even suggest that the mismatch between this old residual memory and the fresh stream of creative light contributes to the instability that leads to the shattering of the vessels, like trying to install a new operating system on hardware haunted by leftover code. Philosophically, Reshimu encodes a big claim. There is no such thing as a truly blank beginning. Every stage of being carries an echo of what preceded it, and that echo is not noise but guidance. Creation is always, on some level, remembering. Tohu, primordial chaos. Tohu is the first unstable version of creation after Tzimtzum, the beta build of the universe. The same word appears in Genesis, Tohu va-vohu, formless and void, and Lurianic Kabbalah reads that line as technical jargon, not poetry. In the world of Tohu, the earliest Sefirot and vessels exist, but they are absolute loners. Each Sephir is full power, all light, no compromise, with no real relationship to any other. Think of 10 instruments all blasting at maximum volume with no conductor, no sheet music, and no sense they're part of a band. The problem here isn't a lack of divine light, it's too much, pouring into rigid, isolated containers that neither share nor regulate. That's why Tohu is called a world of separation. Every quality stands alone, extreme and unbalanced. Later Kabbalah contrasts Tohu with Tikkun, the repaired configuration where Sefirot are interlinked, moderate each other, and share light. Fascinatingly, some Hasidic thinkers say the goal isn't to erase Tohu, but to harvest its raw intensity. Lights of Tohu in vessels of Tikkun, channeling that wild, absolute energy into healthier relational structures. Chaos isn't simply bad. Unrelational chaos is. Ha-Kelim, the vessels. The ha-Kelim, vessels, are the structural forms designed to hold and channel divine light, so it can exist in gradations rather than as one overwhelming blast. Cosmically, each early vessel corresponds to a proto-sephira, crown, wisdom, understanding, love, strength, beauty, and so on, each meant to contain and express one quality in a measured way. But vessel is also a general template. In Kabbalah, anything that gives shape and limit to the infinite, bodies, minds, laws, communities, rituals, is functioning as a kind of kli. In the first configuration of Tohu, these vessels are too rigid and too separate. They can't share load or temper each other, so when the light pours in, they crack. That image becomes a core teaching that repeats at every level. Light without a vessel is destructive overflow. A vessel without light is a dead shell. Moses Cordovero's classic analogy is water poured into differently shaped containers. The water stays the same, but each vessel makes it appear as something else: a river, a cup, a lake. On the human level, this maps to things like talent without discipline, too much light, too little vessel, or strict rules with no compassion, too much vessel, not enough light. Ohr Ein Sof, is the radiance that flows from Ein Sof toward creation, the first something we're allowed to talk about, after that wall of indescribable nothingness. It's not literal photons. It's a metaphor for undifferentiated divine will and life force, the stuff everything downstream runs on. Before Tzimtzum, this light fills all. There is no outside it can shine into. After Tzimtzum, a single calibrated ray or line of this light re-enters the conceptual vacuum, like a focused beam through a pinhole so creation doesn't drown. As it filters through the Sefirot and vessels, the same basic light shows up as wisdom, love, justice, vitality, and eventually as whatever animates physical matter, emotion, and thought. Kabbalists are careful here. Light is a metaphor to help us imagine overflow from source, but the light isn't independent of God. And it isn't God's essence either. It's how an unknowable source chooses to be knowable. When the early vessels shatter, it's essentially this infinite tending light trying to run through underspec wiring. The current is real, the design just isn't ready. Shevirat ha-Kelim, shattering of the vessels. Shevirat ha-Kelim is the origin story of why the world is broken. Creation's first draft literally blows up. In Luria's telling, once the ray of infinite light enters the Tohu vessels, the top three containers, linked to the most abstract intellectual qualities, manage to hold. The seven lower, more emotion/action-oriented vessels can't handle the intensity. They crack and explode. Their shards fall down through the spiritual worlds, dragging bits of the divine light with them. Those bits become the Nitzotzot, sparks. The shards become the basis for dark, distorted structures that later get called Klipot. This does a ton of theological work. Evil and chaos aren't just punishments or random glitches. They're baked into the architecture of version 1 creation, a system that was too rigid and too separate to survive contact with real power. At the same time, Luria insists the shattering is not a cosmic oops God failed to foresee. It's more like demolishing a flawed prototype to build something better out of its parts. The brokenness is tragic, but it's also what creates separate beings, freedom, and the possibility of relationship and repair. Nitzotzot, holy sparks. Nitzotzot, the holy sparks, are tiny fragments of divine light trapped inside the rubble of reality after the shattering. According to Luria, every object, situation, place, and encounter, yes, even very ugly ones, contains at least one spark of original holiness lodged inside some piece of broken vessel. Human beings exist to interact with that rubble in such a way that the sparks can be loosened and lifted back toward their source. In classic Kabbalah, this is very concrete. Eating with blessings and awareness elevates the sparks in food. Doing business honestly elevates sparks in money and commerce. Acting kindly to a difficult person may free a spark buried in that relationship. Some sparks are close to the surface in neutral or mixed domains. Others have sunk deep into destructive patterns, addictions, cruelty, and systemic evil, where approaching them is dangerous and requires serious spiritual maturity. Crucially, Kabbalah sees this not as a metaphor, but as the literal hidden physics of mitzvot and ethical behavior. You're not just being a good person, you're participating in the slow cosmic recycling program that will piece by piece rebuild a shattered world. Klipot, husks, or shells. Klipot are the crust that forms around fallen sparks when things go wrong. They're the spiritual structures that block or distort divine light and, like parasites, survive by feeding on the energy of the sparks trapped inside them. The literature talks about different levels, the three impure Klipot, representing outright destructive forces, and Klipot Noga, a more ambivalent mixed shell that can tilt toward good or bad depending on how it's used. Practically, Klipot map very well onto psychological patterns: hardened ego, compulsions, dishonest systems, seductive half-truths that feel good but slowly hollow you out. Kabbalists insist that evil has no real independent substance. It's animated entirely by the stolen light it misdirects. That's why the recommended strategy is not wrestling the darkness itself, but liberating the sparks sustaining it. When a person breaks an addiction pattern, transforms anger into boundary instead of cruelty, or redirects a corrupt structure towards something just, they're doing exactly that, starving the husk by reclaiming the light it was hoarding. Shekhinah, divine presence. The Shekhinah is the divine presence as it actually shows up in the world, the God down here rather than the God up there. In classical rabbinic literature, Shekhinah already means God's dwelling among people, at Sinai, in the temple, even in a house of study. But Kabbalah turns her into a full-blown persona, the immanent, often feminine aspect of divinity linked to Malchut, the lowest Sephirah. After the shattering and the exile of the sparks, the Shekhinah is described as going into exile too, wandering among the Klipot, trapped in every broken place. Jewish historical trauma, exile, destruction, persecution gets read as a reflection of this cosmic exile. When the people are scattered, the Shekhinah is scattered with them. That's why many Kabbalistic prayers are signed off with the intention, for the sake of uniting the Holy One, blessed be He, and His Shekhinah. Every mitzvah is an attempt to reunite the transcendent aspect of God with the immanent presence that's been dragged through mud with us. In modern times, Shekhinah has become a powerful symbol in feminist and progressive theology, sometimes as a reclaimed divine feminine, sometimes as an icon of a God who suffers with the oppressed. Kabbalistically, though, the plot remains the same. Repair the world, and you help bring the Shekhinah home. Tree of Life, Chaim, is the master diagram of Kabbalah, the wiring map that shows how divine energy flows from the infinite into concrete reality and how the soul can travel back up in awareness. It's drawn as 3 vertical columns, right, left, and center, with 10 points connected by 22 paths, like a mystical circuit board. The right pillar represents expansion, kindness, creativity, overflowing generosity. The left pillar represents contraction, limits, discipline, judgment, structure. The middle pillar is the balancing spine that integrates both, turning wild compassion and strict justice into something actually livable. Kabbalists meditate on specific paths, visualize moving up and down the diagram, or map life situations onto it. Where am I too rigid? Left. Where too loose? Right. And what would a middle pillar response look like? Over time, the tree escaped its original context and got adopted by Christian mystics, Renaissance magicians, the Golden Dawn, Jungians, and even tattoo artists. But the basic job never changed. It's a visual tool to explain how one hidden source can cascade into many layers of experience without ever really breaking apart. The Ten Sefirot. A Sephirah, plural Sefirot, is one of the 10 fundamental modes through which the infinite God expresses, organizes, and sustains reality in Kabbalah, like distinct frequencies or channels of one divine light rather than separate gods. The 10 Sefirot are the 10 stations or channels on the Tree of Life, where these modes show up most clearly. Keter, crown, is pure will and superconsciousness. Chochmah, wisdom, is the raw flash of insight. Binah, understanding, is analysis and structure. Chesed, kindness, is limitless giving. Gevurah, judgment, is boundary and restraint. Tifereh, beauty, is the harmonious heart that balances love and discipline. Netzach, endurance, is drive and ambition. Hod, splendor, is humility, refinement, and honest communication. Yesod, foundation, is connection and alignment, the pipeline into reality. Malkut, kingdom, is manifestation, the world as we actually live it. These divine qualities are mirrored inside our own psyche as character traits and ways of relating. So, practical Kabbalah often means working on a specific Sephirah in yourself, dialing down a harsh Gevurah with more Chesed, or shoring up a weak Yesod so Malkut, your actual life outcomes, isn't chaotic. Texts say each Sephirah contains all 10 within itself, which means the system is endlessly nested. Every emotion, decision, or situation can be unpacked into a mini tree of life made of intertwined Sephirot, giving you a detailed map for both spiritual and psychological work. 4 worlds are the 4 descending layers of reality that Kabbalah maps out, with each level containing its own complete tree of life and Sephirot. Atzilut, emanation, is the realm closest to Ein Sof, pure divine consciousness where everything still feels like God. Beriah, creation, is the world of divine ideas and archetypes, the blueprint stage before anything takes form. Yetzirah, formation, is the emotional and angelic realm where energies get shaped into patterns. Think divine feelings and protoforms. Asiya, action, is our physical universe plus its spiritual underbelly, where all that higher energy finally hits matter. Every soul spans all four worlds, and every mitzvah or conscious act you do in Asya sends ripples upward, retuning the higher levels. Some Lurianic systems add Adam Kadmon, primordial man, as a Zeroth world above Absolute, the first whisper of divine intention before it fragments into the four main stages. Tikkun Olam, world repair, is Kabbalah's endgame mission. Humans exist to repair creation's original fractures by liberating trapped holy sparks, healing the Shekhinah's exile, and restoring smooth divine flow through the Sefirot and four worlds. In the classic Lurianic sense, this is metaphysical engineering. Every prayer with kavana, focus, every mitzvah performed with awareness, literally elevates specific sparks from Klipot back to their source, like cosmic recycling. You're assigned certain sparks at birth that only your unique life can free. A farmer blessing their food, a merchant acting honestly, a parent loving fiercely, all count as tikkun when done intentionally. Modern Judaism broadened it into social justice, feeding the poor, fighting oppression, which aligns beautifully with the original when you see vulnerability as spark traps. The big payoff, enough collective repair across generations, hits critical mass, triggering not a miraculous messiah from the sky, but a phase shift where reality itself upgrades from broken beta to perfected release.